So I just finished playing Resident Evil 7 Biohazard on Amazon Luna, and I kind of want to give you guys my thoughts on it and Amazon Luna's gaming platform. I also got the Amazon Luna controller, which I used during the entire playthrough of Resident Evil. And I beat the game using a Fire TV Cube, but I played the very first part of it using a Fire TV stick. I recorded the footage you guys are seeing here mostly from the native Luna app on Windows, since it's work getting an external screen recorder to work with Fire devices. And I've not used any other cloud gaming or streaming platform before, so I'm a brand new user in that regard. And so Amazon Luna is a cloud gaming platform developed and operated by Amazon and integrated with Twitch. They said that they'd have something like 100 games available at launch, but I only see a fraction of that in the library, but the base price is $5.99 a month. It's powered by AWS and can be played from a web browser, a native app on PCs, Mac, and Android, built-in apps inside of Fire devices, and even inside of some OEM TVs. It has its own controller that connects directly to Luna servers independent from the device that you're playing on, which helps to reduce input latency. Now, the controller itself is basically like a small Xbox One controller with slightly different system buttons, and it's got some texture on the grips. Outside of Luna's Direct Connect thing, it uses Bluetooth or USB-C, so it can be connected directly to a computer, and it can be used to control your Fire TV devices too, just like you would with a regular game console. And it can be used out of the box on Windows, but it won't be supported on Linux until a later kernel version. So let's just get to the question that everybody wants to know first. How is the input latency? In general, it was good, but it did seem to depend on the device I was playing Luna through, and of course whether or not I was using Direct Connect from the controller. Now, believe it or not, the Luna controller was phenomenal in terms of input latency when using the Direct Connect thing. If you've ever paired an Alexa, it's kind of the same idea where you go into the Luna app on your phone, share your Wi-Fi with it, and then it handles the rest. So when you're looking at Luna from your TV or monitor, you aren't controlling the device that you're playing on, but rather Luna itself, if that makes any sense. The difference is like night and day if you go from Direct Connect on the controller to USB or Bluetooth in the same Luna session. Same with the mouse and keyboard, which is what I'm using for most of the footage here. When I first got Luna, I was playing it on a Fire TV stick. The Luna interface, like the library and stuff, was actually pretty laggy, but it was much less so in the game. I was still really impressed with it though, so I upgraded to a Fire Cube. And with the Fire Stick, it has to be connected through Wi-Fi, but the Fire Cube uses Ethernet, so you can hardline it straight into your gateway, and it felt like that reduced input latency quite a bit. Since this is a streaming platform with input controls and all that stuff, all of the content has to be streamed over your network. There's a little section in Luna settings that lets you set whether you want 720p or 1080p along with some data estimates. The only time I really thought I saw compression artifacts is at the very beginning of the game when it launches. It shows those intro videos. But every single part of Resident Evil seemed to be in full HD and looked as good on my 1080p TV as it would have been if I was playing an Xbox or something like that. The audio was great though. I didn't notice any decrease or variable quality or anything like that. Again, it is pretty much exactly as I would expect it on an actual game console. So I can't easily show you the exact Luna interface from my Fire device, but this is the idea. It's definitely not just a web page, if that's what you were wondering. It's basically the same Amazon Fire interface, if you're familiar with that, but with a different color scheme and games instead of movies and apps and stuff. On the computer, you can use a web browser or the Amazon Luna app. The web browser, I think, is really just for compatibility because it's going to be inferior to the native apps in every way, and you can't really use the Luna controller with it, or I couldn't figure out how to. The desktop app is basically a little game store, for better and worse. It only runs officially on Mac and Windows, and I couldn't get it to install on Linux due to some obscure permissions issue. And even when I copied the files from my Windows install, it still wouldn't launch, so. But it's a shame because Luna would be perfect for my little Linux workstation. If you guys can figure out how to install Luna on Linux, I would totally come back and do a Linux-specific review of it. So the game selection is kind of meh, honestly. It mostly has popular games from the past decade, and they're games that don't really interest me much, but given that this is like a little living room streaming gaming service, it's not that bad. That's actually why I wanted Luna in the first place. If you guys remember from a long time ago, I've tried to do Steam machines, but for various reasons, those just don't work. And emulation machines, like with Raspberry Pi and stuff, those can only go so far because they're just, emulators and stuff. So this is kind of exactly what I had in mind. And there are games that capture my attention, such as Resident Evil, but it's not something I would ever purchase. I just beat Resident Evil 7 in a little over a week of casual playing, and it cost me less than $6. If you're the type of person that binges games for hours and hours on end, this is like an incredible value, right? Amazon partnered with Ubisoft too, but that requires an additional subscription of about $15. There are a ton of games in there though, so maybe it's a good value to you. For a gaming streaming service that I use maybe a couple hours a week, $5.99 is a great deal for me, but $14.99, not so much. And I guess I can talk a little bit about Resident Evil here too. The last Resident Evil I played was Resident Evil 3 Nemesis, so it's been a while. I used to be a big Resident Evil buff way back in the day, and I kind of fell out of it because it was a console exclusive for a while and I didn't have a console. Games like Resident Evil have a pretty big cognitive load because the stories are usually pretty deep, and to get the most out of the game, which I like to, you really need to pay attention and get into the lore. So just as I remembered about Resident Evil, I liked practically everything about this game. The first-person perspective was an absolute trip because remember, the last time I played Resident Evil was Nemesis, so that was like back with tank controls and weird camera angles and stuff. Aiming and shooting was difficult at first, and I think auto-aim actually made things more difficult. I played it on easy difficulty because I didn't know what to expect, and headshotting just creates a major hassle. By the end of the game, I think I was pretty good at it, so I don't think it was the game's fault. I'm just not used to playing on a controller. And visually, the game was fantastic, and there's a lot of little details that really help sell the atmosphere of the game. I love how the player's hand presses against walls and the doors when he's moving up to them. Really, really awesome. But in my opinion, the weakest part of the game is the characters. I think that they tried to make Ethan just a generic everyman, but he is in a bad way. For starters, his personality is basically non-existent, so he's not relatable at all, and as far as I know, he has no tie-ins to the Resident Evil storyline at all, so he's just like a random character. The Baker family took me some time to get into at first, but by the end of the game I was pretty excited to play the DLC and learn more about them. My favorite characters were Mia and Eveline. Mia was just awesome, being both terrifying during the hallucinations and badass during the flashbacks. I think they did a really good job with the character in the game too. The voice actress is fantastic, and the motion capture for her scripted events mesh perfectly with the story in the scene. And Eveline is just like, well, you'll have to play the game to learn more about her. All I'll say about her is that her character is very, very good, and she and Mia scared me more times than I can count. I got the bad ending though because I made the pragmatic choice near the middle of the game. The version of Resident Evil 7 that comes with Amazon Luna has all of the DLCs, and the minigames are pretty good. Some are just for fun, and others tie off some loose ends in the story. The controls are pretty okay for the controller and the mouse and keyboard. Aiming is way easier with the mouse obviously, but overall I feel like the game is kind of meant to be played with the gamepad. And so yeah, those are my thoughts on Amazon Luna and Resident Evil. Now this video was quite a bit more involved than other videos I produce, and it started out as just a simple idea, but I quickly realized that there is a lot of moving parts to this. It was still really fun to make though, so let me know if you liked the video by leaving a like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. I appreciate all your support, and thanks for watching.